You
So,
man.
you got a TV show for me?
I sure do. So it's a. You ever see Boys in the Hood?
Oh yeah, that show is tight.
Well, this is kind of white man's Boys in the Hood.
Oh, I love taking black people and making them white.
Making black people white is tight.
It is. It's tight. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
So, what can you tell me about these white boys?
well, these white boys are going to enter into a situation where their parents don't take care of them in an emotional sense, and so they have to run away and face the terrible trials of the city.
Hmm. Standard. Sounds like some standard coming of age stuff. Coming of age stuff is tight. We can
Tight.
definitely make money on that.
Yeah, I think that. So anyway, these kids, they're gonna go into dangerous situations where they really should have the common sense to not go, like a shooting gallery of punk rock, heroin addicts,
Oh wow.
and homeless kids, but also veterans and people who are from places where, prison, and they're gonna basically survive in a dangerous place.
Sounds to me like we should call social services, not make a TV show.
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought about that, and then I sort of said, you know what, just get off my back about that. These kids are gonna survive anyway.
Surviving is good, I guess.
Yeah. So anyway, then they're going to do lots of LSD, a tremendous amount of LSD, and then they're going to be homeless in the city. Eventually, they're going to be collected by,
Celebrating homeless drug abuse is tight.
and then they're going to be collected by homosexuals in the city who create weird theater that make these kids do strange things on stage.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of shows that are about gay people, so that sounds like we might be able to make some money from that.
Yeah, I think we're going to be able to get the gay market really well on this one. And then, of course, there's the young romance. I mean, these kids fuck like bunnies. They're going to have romances everywhere, and they're going to sleep with women, and then they're going to have relationships, and then they're going to sleep. They're going to cheat on their relationships. In the meanwhile, they're doing this crazy theater. And what I think is,
No. All right. Let's go on. Let's go on. Let's go on. Uh, all right, buddy.
no, wait, we didn't
No,
use
it's
the.
okay, man. It's okay.
No, we got to get to it. Here, just take over
No.
where I was. Okay, wait, then I'll have
No,
to say.
that's okay, man. That's okay. We can just say that. We can just say the words. We can just recite them. That's okay. How are you doing today?
Okay, I'm good. I kind of have like a moment to myself. Peanut is running. Mom is out getting her hair dyed. Um, it's weird, like I think mom is feeling it pretty hardcore. She took down the pictures of us on the refrigerator. Like she's just going and doing whatever she wants. Like Sherry was kind of like, Mom, like you can't just do this or do that. And she was like, I'm going to do whatever I want. And then she walked out of our conversation. Like she's just in a total, she has no idea how to be accountable, and again, like I have totally stepped off of the need to do that, um, to get her to,
Hmm. Yeah, that seems like a good idea.
but it seems like these kids are going to be kind of mentally destroyed by all of this, aren't they? how are they going to keep their sanity? No, it's going to be easy, barely an inconvenience. That was what I was searching for.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But I think that's the the whole idea of that pitch meeting is, how are these kids not going to go nuts?
I needed you to give me a little bit more space to speak. I felt like you were just kind of like rambling on there.
Oh, I see why you stopped it.
Correct. Love you, buddy.
Love you, man. We're using enhanced encryption.
What? We are?
Yeah.
Is that what it says?
In the upper left-hand corner, there's a green shield next to recording.
Oh, I see. Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, I'm sorry you felt that way. That sucks.
No, it was fun, man.
I sent a bunch of stuff to the Raised by Wolves drive. It's called Examples from Other Shows.
Oh, great.
And what it is it's the Seamaster calendar from like the first month that we were working.
What is it?
It's the master calendar and a draft schedule from C when we were just beginning.
Right.
It's SAG rules, and then there's also in Raised by Wolves. I'll move them here. Are all of the episodes 1 through 9 of C as they were first pitched.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, none of them ended up being that way.
Is that okay? So and you put all that stuff into its own folder?
Yeah, it's called Examples from Other Shows.
Great, awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, it's like, it's really interesting to recognize that humor is our friend, because if we I don't know, yeah, too much processing. I'll get all the way off my back about that. Yeah, I don't know.
So I'm reading this book that was recommended to me by my therapist, and it's pretty amazing. It's called Man's Search for Meaning, and it is.
That's Jung?
No, it's I think it's Viktor Frankl, I think is his name.
Okay.
And it is Viktor Frankl.
Yeah, Frankl. I know that book.
Have you read it, or you just know about it?
No, I just know it.
Yeah, it's fucking weird because it's like, I guess the guy is like a renowned therapist or something. Like he's like kind of like, I guess he supposedly started a certain brand of psychotherapy or something, and the whole thing is essentially recounting his experience in a fucking concentration camp. So it's really intense, like really, really intense. I mean, like I guess I haven't ever really read like first person accounts um of concentration camp victims. It is fucking heavy. And it's especially wild because, you know, he's a doctor, right? I mean, he's a therapist. I guess he was a therapist going into it. And, uh, you know, and it's all just his detailing of what life was like in a fucking concentration camp. It is really fucking heavy. And you know, at this point, he's kind of gotten, I guess it's halfway through the book, and he is starting to talk about, you know, kind of like the point of, you know, the point of the therapy part or the whatever, the, you know, he's kind of getting to that. And it's really kind of about how, how it's really it's up to us to kind of like have something to live for, something that's important to us that we look forward to, kind of thing. Like, you know, the part that I just read was about how like they found that, you know, he noticed that around Christmas time, in between like something like in between Christmas and New Year, there was like a spike in how many people died um, at the camp, and he said it was because people had this belief that somehow Christmas would be a time that they would be released, you know, that it would be over. And because that didn't happen, that they lost hope. And then that in turn kind of just like, you know, they had nothing to go for. And you know, and he talks regularly about how, you know, throughout his ordeal, what kept him going was like his, you know, he had this ongoing internal dialogue with his wife. Like he was always, you know, looking forward to seeing his wife again and how much he loved her, and like that was the most important thing to him. And so he had this kind of like this ideal that, you know, this you know, in his mind, this woman that he was kind of like, you know, focused on, and and you know, she was dead. But he was like, but it didn't really matter. What mattered was that he had that like thing to look forward to and hope for, and that was what kept him going. And it's just really like, it's fascinating because, you know, his experience in the camp really drove home the, I guess really what it was like just our uh like how out of control we really are, you know, when it comes to the events that occur in our lives and around us, and that really when it comes down to it, like our, you know, what keeps us going is having something that we believe in and something that matters to us and something that we have to look forward to. um and I thought like maybe, you know, because we did that one exercise where we were just like, you know, like the interviewer, I guess, where we were like, well, what's it about? And then I was thinking like maybe it also might be good for us to do like a visioning exercise of like afterwards, right? Like us talking to people after we're successful and our show's on Netflix and it gets picked up for a third season, you know what I mean? Like that might be something good too, right? I mean, like it's weird because like one of the things that I've been struggling with, as I've told you, is like feeling like what's the point, right? I mean, like I didn't learn anything. I kept making the same mistakes over and over again, and that is disheartening, and that does make it hard to go forward, right? But then I started to think about it, and I was like, well, what if we are successful? What if this works? Right? Like, what if we get this produced and make it happen? And then does that mean that everything was worth it after all? I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's just like,
That is yes, man. Look, Dan Harmon, I asked him, like, look, how do you write?
wait,
I,
what?
I was at a Nerdist thing. I'll send it to you because I asked him a question at the end of like the last question at a Nerdist thing. And I say basically like, what do you do to write? What is your discipline? How do you do it? And he said, I am not a noble person. I am not a good person. The best that I can do is not hurt anything and not hurt anyone and not be too much of a schlub for the person that I love, who I'm next to all the time, and try to just stay out of the way, except for when I do the one thing that I know I can do well that will make an impact, and that's writing. And when I go to write, what happens is I get prison raped by God. I am not there. It is not pleasant. I
Say
do
that.
not wish it on anyone. I don't care for anyone to be able to suffer the way that I do, but it is the one thing that I do. And when I do it, I know that I'm doing good in the world. And the rest of the time, I just try to shut the fuck up,
Wow.
you
Wow.
know? And that really left an impact on me because the truth of the matter is, I'm not special. I don't need to be special. I'm not a special person. I have special things I do. Okay. And when I do those things, I'm really good at them and I shine. And that's what I'm here to do. And that's great. And one of the things that I'm here to do is make sure that we produce this show. Okay. So anything else and all the stories that I have about myself and all the realities of how I didn't succeed and all that bullshit is not important. Was it all worth it? Fuck you. Not you, but fuck the person that's asking that question. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, it was all worth it. You're doing it. We're doing it. It's fun. It's good. It's a good thing to do with life. And then it's not fun and it's being prison raped by God and you have no choice and you're just in the room and there it is, the overwhelming force that you have to face yourself and you have to be honest with who you were at that time and what's compelling about it and why it matters for someone who's in the same situation who, if they watch it, will like reach them. This isn't for us. This is for our audience. Like, I am doing this because it's beautiful to connect with you. I am doing this because I know there's value in our life. But to produce a show means you know that this has value for an audience. I'll find that Nerdist thing. It was a Nerdist. Yeah, there was like one of the writers or producers of
The most common reaction to a virtual.
Sorry. There was like one of the producers of Battlestar Galactica. Like it was a panel, and Dan was on the panel.
You just happened to be there. Oh, what? And so it was like it was recorded, and you were in the audience. You got to ask a question.
Yep, that's not that one.
Why don't you just send me the link?
I'm trying to find it.
Oh, okay.
All right, it'll take me time to find. So,
the question because that's
You
the
can just you can just find this later. This isn't something you have to do now.
I'll find it later. But yeah, that piece was really important for me, and I haven't since like actually done anything with it. But this is something that I wanna keep in mind, because yes. So tell me, when you were working on this, like what motivated you to actually do the writing?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah. What motivated you to create this script?
Sense of duty.
So it was about a poop?
Yeah, mostly. I think that should be obvious as reading the content of the material.
So tell me more about duty.
The responsibility to those kids. The responsibility to make it worth it.
That makes sense.
Got a responsibility to make it matter. Everything that they went through.
Why does it matter what they went through?
I mean, it matters if we make it matter, and that's kind of that's part of this. That's a big part of why this is something to do.
It matters if we make it
Because
matter.
I mean, if we can provide meaning, we can provide meaning to those moments, those experiences. I mean, in a lot of ways, I mean that's really, I mean that's literally what's going on, right? I mean, like we're literally making those moments into something, right? So that they're not just kind of like there and gone.
I'd like you to talk about the process of the script to the casting. Like, what were you looking for when you were searching for the kids who were going to play you and your brother in the show?
I mean, I was. Well, I mean, I think that I mean, I think all you need to do is just take a look at the characters to understand what was required. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's on its face, right? I mean, doesn't come as any surprise. I mean, the characters needed to be charismatic, empathetic, quirky.
But how are you going to work on, the like in the audition process? Was there a lot of like looking for dynamic between the two characters?
I don't know. Can you do that in that kind of a process?
Of course, you're always looking for chemistry. My real question is, now that you've won this Emmy for your work, what do you feel like what is the secrets? Like, what's the secret sauce? Like, what is it about the process, or what is it about like the experiences that you had? What really makes this show special? Why is this a special show, and why has it been so critically acclaimed? Why do you feel it is?
I mean, I don't have anything profound to say to that. This is, this is pretty standard when it comes to writing. You write what you know, and I think that like if you can be authentic, then people will resonate with that authenticity, um, and that it's the authenticity itself is what is resonated with, less than the actual content of the character. Um, and so, um, yeah, I think that's really.
But you obviously touched a nerve. Like you obviously touched a nerve in the American story. Like you were speaking to something that needed to be spoken. What do you feel that this actually said to people that like let it resonate or had it resonate with them?
Well, I mean, our country, our world is in a period of crisis, and I think that one of the interesting things about the story that we tell is that that was something that the characters are aware of very early on, and I think that what we had, the opportunity that we have in the show is to really empathize with a what I think is becoming more and more accepted in uh, in the broader society, which is that there is a significant and fundamental problem that we have that's really societal, that's really cultural, it's really pervasive, and it's structural, and and I think that what I like to think of is the mistake that a lot of people make, thinking that the failures in their lives and the mistakes that are made in their lives are a result of uh, a fundamental wrongness that exists within them, when in reality much of our failures and our disappointments and our frustrations come from a a really dysfunctional community and a really dysfunctional society, a broader society. And I think people are coming to understand that more and more. And I think that the opportunity that we have, that we are provided with this story, is to be able to really illustrate that, bring that out, but also offer some, so for one thing, to offer an alternative narrative, right? That it's not necessarily your fault that you're not doing well, that you're not successful, but also that there are opportunities, that there are real ways that things can improve, and that we have available to us.
But it's interesting how we see the kids kind of like see the opportunities consistently, but choose something else. Do you feel like that's something that you were trying to do in order to show people that, like what was really going on there in the writing process for you?
Well, the reality is that people with heterodox opinions, different ways of viewing the world, are really do not have space to be able to. Um, they don't have a freedom to be able to make decisions and choices that reflect those kind of like those unusual opinions of the way that the world works, or how the world could work. We live in a world that's very locked down, where common sense and what is normal is very strongly enforced. People who are outside the boundaries are considered to be targets for cancellation. Um, if they're even offered, if they even manage to get to a point where they have an opportunity to make those significant decisions in the first place. And I think that what we're illustrating, what I hope that we can illustrate is that you know you can have a vision, you can have an answer, you can have a desire for alternative you can have an alternative vision, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to enact it, because in the world that we live in, the world that we operate in, there are no pathways to those alternatives. They're extremely rare. They are on the margins. People who want to live their lives in a different way are seen as dysfunctional. They are seen as, bizarre, and to be kind of like condemned and shunted away, as opposed to kind of embraced and understood, and and for there to be a conversation about like a different way of looking at things. And so, I think there's a lot, for me, I have a lot of sympathy for today. I have a lot more sympathy for the character that I was, and his inability to be able to really craft a tangible alternative to what he understood to be a dysfunctional world. I have a lot more sympathy to that character, because today I understand and I see that opportunities for different ways of being are very locked down. They're very very closed off, and really, I mean, the Joker, the movie The Joker comes to mind. It's like, for people to, people are so oppressed in what we're allowed to conceive of, that there's so much pressure on people who are nonconformists, that the only way to express ourselves in a lot of times is to act out. I think what we see a lot is an acting out, and I think that a lot of the stories that we see are, the kids acting out, not necessarily out of a rational approach towards achieving an end, but really just kind of like out of frustration that there isn't, that the world does not really provide alternative, like as I was saying, a heterodox understanding of the world. Though there are not obvious ways to come to that place. And so, I think that a lot of what we see is just like an anger and a frustration being expressed, because we live in a world that's so locked down.
Beautiful, beautiful. I have three more questions for you. The first is, talking about the dysfunctional and the misfit. It seems like that this is either in a tradition or kind of like, this is a new genre in a way, and it seems like I'm wondering if you really see this as more of, how would you define the genre? Do you see this as a genre-defining show, or do you see this as being a part of a legacy of stories? And if you do, like, what is the legacy, really?
Well, I mean, what I hope to see is what has been called post-ironic, and I hope that we can really see a post-ironic movement growing, where we reconnect with authenticity, and reject cynicism. I think that one of the things that I find extremely disappointing is that, well, for one thing, people have ignored Generation X, right, which I'm a part of. One of the things that I think characterized Gen X early on was a need for authenticity. I think that Gen X kind of like grew out of like the Reagan era, and like this kind of very self-centered, like, so, the 80s were really kind of like a reaction to the cultural freedoms of the 60s and 70s. And so then there, and in response there, we see this real significant lockdown in what is acceptable in our broader culture. And we see like the return of this, father knows best, uh, the cleavers, for those who kind of get that reference. And I think that, in response to that, Gen X originally were about authenticity and reality, and just kind of like really calling out uh, the, the brutal and the unsustainable kind of world that we were being sold. Unfortunately, I think that what ended up happening was that that authenticity ended up basically being processed and resold to that generation and the following generations. And what I hope to see, and that ended up, I think, kind of turning into more cynicism, and kind of like a kind of a looking at authenticity as kind of like a joke, really. And I hope that we can kind of find ourselves in a post-cynical, post-ironic kind of world, where we really value authenticity, and we value like instead of seeing the protagonist ride off into the sunset, instead of some kind of like a deus ex machina where one thing after another occurs to just kind of like immiserate the poor victim of like a horror movie. Instead we really understand that the world for us to make it through a very challenging time for humanity as a whole. I think that we find that what's really required is that we understand that there are subtleties to these things, that human beings are fallible, that we are complex, that we're not one thing or another. And so essentially to, that are the solutions that we need to come to require a willingness to, basically see people that we would otherwise condemn as human beings that require attention and healing and compassion, and that is only going to come through that kind of like authentic understanding and appreciation of how human beings are just complex creatures, that don't always get what they want, that aren't always going to be successful, that aren't always going to look like a hero necessarily, or a villain.
I think you've spoken to my second question, so I'd like to kind of just piggyback this one. So you don't get to win Emmys and succeed on this level unless you really are speaking to everyone on some level. It is a point of view. Obviously, the show is very much a point of view. It's very much these kids, but for some reason, it seems to reach out to everybody. Everybody understands it and really relates to it. Even if they don't understand it, they relate to it. And so I'm wondering, what you think it is that everyone understands about kids.
Well, the tagline is, where do you turn when, where do you turn to when there's nowhere left to go? And, I think that everybody, or many, many people in today's increasingly alienated society, feel as though there is nowhere for them to turn. And, I think that's one of the reasons why you are seeing an increase in these kind of smaller, very hyper partisan types of groups. I don't know if you're aware of like this new Boogaloo organization that I just found out about, which is like this kind of
Yeah, the ones who are trying to bring about the new Civil War.
yeah, and I mean, and I think that what we need to understand is that this growing alienation is not new, and again, this comes back to my earlier point that it's essential that we understand that so much of the failures and the dysfunction that we experience, the sadness, depression, frustration, anger in our life, so much of this comes from a broader dysfunctional society. And I think what we're seeing is one of the reasons that there is such an appeal for this show is because at its core, the protagonists are really what the story is talking about is that what do we do when we have nowhere else to go? Where do we go when we feel like we have nowhere to turn to? And we look for a place where we won't be judged. We look for a place um, where we can feel as though we can be ourselves without having to worry about without having to worry about what people will think of us. And that I think is something that more and more people today are able to relate to and understand, because there is like we are constantly scrutinized because of our digital footprint, because of just the internet and social media. We're constantly being scrutinized, who we are, what we think. We're constantly under threat of judgment, and more people want to be able to escape that and to just feel like they can be themselves. And at its core, that is what the two protagonists of the story, at its core, that is their journey, that is their story, is to be able to find a place where they can feel like they belong, find a place where they can be themselves, find a place where they won't be judged for just being themselves. And obviously, the tragedy of the story is that no matter where they go, they don't find that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's, it's, which is good because then, we're always going to have another season to write. So, yeah, we're good to go.
So, last question. It's more just a sense of, how real were these conversations? In the first episode, there's that stunning conversation between the two brothers where they are talking about life and its meaning. And this is a very adult conversation. Like, do you really recall and remember being 14 and 16 and being able to break life down in such a way? I mean, obviously the language is reduced to, these kids, but the concepts are such high concept. How much of it do you feel was constructed, and how much do you feel like yeah, how much did they, in terms of the search for me, did you really have those conversations?
Uh, they were actually transcribed word for word. So, yeah, they're entirely authentic.
But I mean, like some of the things, like where, the conflicts and resolutions that occur between blacks and whites in the show, between people of color in all these different dimensions, all the relationships between power and the youth. Like, do you feel like you wrote this to match these times, or do you actually feel like you were sourcing real things? Because it's a little uncanny
Well,
how
again, I mean,
much
again, I think that you probably should. I would suggest it for people who think this way, that you kind of like consider your own arrogance. I think that children see things clearly. They may not have the tools to reason out things. They may not have the words with which to say it. They may not have the experience to understand what the most efficient pathway towards uh, a desired outcome may be. Nevertheless, that does not mean that they cannot realize, sense, understand you know, where things are failing, where things are falling apart, where things are sad, don't feel good. Uh, so so to kind of project onto youth an inability or a lack of awareness of the fundamental problems that we experience, that we see in the world as adults and understand, is hubris. The that is not to say that kids have a good sense of solution, and I think that we see that again and again in the plots of the individual episodes where, you know, different characters attempt things that fail miserably. Sure, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's easy to dismiss, you know, the efforts or the understanding of children. Nevertheless, you know, that does not mean that they don't see things clearly. It just means that they may not be able to communicate well enough to for adults to get why they think the way that they do or do the things that they do. You know, again, you know, one of the problems that I think we as adults have is, you know, thinking that because children make mistakes, because children are, you know, earnest or excited about things that we are cynical about, that somehow that makes them, you know, less aware or less understanding. And I think that that is an unfortunate approach to take. Um,
And that's, I think that's a nice way to kind of bring it to closure here. When you say, you know, the children can kind of see things clearly, and yet there's an earnestness, and there's an earnestness to them, and yet they don't understand the way things work. Do you feel that the youth movements that are currently happening have any capacity to shift the way that the country, our country, America, or the world is operating?
Shame on us. Shame on us. It is not the children who should be making adult decisions. It's shame on us that we need to look to children to protest in the street. Shame on adults to put those children in the position where they have to, for their own sake, for the sake of their future, that they demand on the streets what adults refuse to give to them, and that's what they should be giving. Shame on us for that.
So do you feel that childhood is something that should be protected? I mean, I think that one of the things that is one of the dangers, you know, and the criticisms that you've received is that it seems to be a flag waved, you know, for children to have these kinds of liberating experiences. And you know, the right-wing critics have come down very hard on your show despite its success, saying that it is encouraging children to leave safe places, and have these kinds of dangerous experiences. Can you respond to that quickly in closing?
Certainly. So the question is, are we encouraging bad behavior? And, you know, and I think that fundamentally what the critics of the show who you are describing need to, again, I would say, take a look in the mirror. What is it that they have failed to do, that have required that an entire generation of children needs to look to drugs, look to violence, look to crime, what have you, whatever it is? They need to look at themselves in the face, and realize that the decisions that they've made, the responsibilities that they have, that we have as adults to the next generations, that responsibility has not been fulfilled for selfish reasons, whatever they may be, because of like a desire for profit or for power. But I would put that question back on them and demand that they answer to those children that they haven't taken care of. take a look at them and ask, what were the conditions that forced you into these situations that we consider to be so horrendous? Why were those children? Why did they feel that they had no other choice but then to go out onto the street? What was it about their family, and not just their family, but society as a whole, that did not provide to them the kind of mentorship, the kind of support, the services that they required to be able to be fully functioning, fully realized members of our society? Don't put it on the children. Don't put that responsibility on the children. That's what mentorship is for. That's what adults are supposed to do for kids. And I'd be happy to debate any of those right-wingers that you're describing. I would love to get into a room with them to find out what their priorities are and what's important to them and what they care about and how that squares with the decisions that they make that end up with kids who are addicts, a whole country of addicts whose life expectancy are down, a whole country of children who are living with their parents because they have no economic opportunities because of the decisions that these adults have made in pursuit of their profits.
And how do you feel like this relates to the season finale and the way in which the character that I believe is your character confronts the power in the story?
Yeah, well, it was tough. It was tough to kind of get the plot to bomb the White House was a difficult one to get through the writing room. I'm not gonna lie. I had to bribe some folks and do a little in the back room. But yeah.
Great. I really appreciate, especially the understanding that the Me Too movement is alive and well in your productions, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
No, I needed to do that to them, not the other way around. Yeah. No.
But I mean, it was always a mutual thing. I mean, I know women want it, but it's anyway.
That's what Harvey Weinstein said too. It was a mutual thing. Yeah. No, I get that.
All right. Thank you for everybody.
Time to go.
Cool. That was great. Now, what I want to reflect to you, Rabbit, you talked about what if, and I think it's really important. I was reading today, what if, so there were three things that I was reading in, it's her book, the Marge Piercy, So You Want to Write. And I was reading, and it's Asimov broke it down into three categories: what if only, and if this continues. And the what if is the speculative, the if only is the utopian, and the if this continues is the dystopian versions of science fiction. And what I wanted to say to you is the what if, the speculative, right? What if my voice matters? What if my life wasn't worthless? What if we could actually succeed? What if, and what I want to point out to you is our story has a point of view. Our story has resonance with people for all the things that you just spoke about so eloquently. What if you were a person that people should be listening to? What if you were a leader? What if the version that I had of you as a child is actually who you are? It's speculative, sure. But what if? And in this like search for meaning, this desire that we have to make something of value, to offer something of our understanding, that we did have a fucking straight line to the center of what reality was. We just didn't know how to articulate ourselves in action to do anything valuable about it. And every attempt we made failed because we were still trying to struggle with the edges of our own desire, our own id, our own failure to have a valuable superego that said, this is actually how you should be, because we had no mentorship. You know,
like struggling with our edges. That's pretty wicked.
you know, like the fact of our mentors and the experience we had, most of them were traps. You know, I look at most of them as like bad corners in a video game where you can't get out to get up to the next level. You know, most of the things that we were trying, like that we were avoiding, you know, we're like, okay, you ended up third level, you're done. Do you know what I mean? Like you just sit there now in that corner of life and you're done. You don't get any more experience. You know, where the experience that you have is just for that. You're that. You know, and we were just kept, you know, kind of avoiding those traps. And that's like, I think that's so much of the gift of our characters, of our story, is that we avoided the traps, but we never got caught by anything. You know, Jules talks to me a lot about how he didn't choose to have kids in France. He just made himself a promise that he wasn't going to avoid anything for a period of time. And he made commitments because of it. And then he had kids, and then he was in France, and that was it. And we often have this conversation about and how, like,
I couldn't hear the last part because of the train.
me and Jules often have the conversation about personal will and why we're not driven to have personal will to do things, you know, because we don't feel like we're worth it, or that there's a, you know, like, but yet, and still, you know, I wanted to ask you a question about, you know, the parallels between these stories that you guys make of Watership Down, and how, you know, the theory, you know, like the storyline is that they have to leave something dangerous in order to come to a more beautiful place, you know, like, and that on the way they have to avoid all the traps, you know. And I just think that it's very important for us to acknowledge that whether life that we've lived is valuable or not, we have avoided most of the trappings, you know, that make life dead, and that kind of catch people. And again, there's good and bad about that, but I just thought, like, I just wanted to kind of emphasize that just because we still haven't found our place at 50 and 53, 52, 53, doesn't mean that, like,
Here, bro. 52. Okay.
yeah, sorry.
Actually, no. No. 53. Yeah, 50. No, 52. 52. 52, motherfucker. Fuck off, man. Fuck off. How's 50? How's it feeling?
Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, well, let me tell you something. You tell me how it feels once it happens. You're
Well,
gonna
look,
love it.
everything that mom is doing is
What?
mom's just trying to prove that 73 is still valid. 74, sorry, 74. 74
What,
should fight.
what are you saying? You mean to say that you can still act like a child at 74, so you can still be a child at 50? Is that what you're trying to say?
Or look, you know, that it takes a long time to create value, and that it's always about creating meaning one step at a time.
Or it takes as long as it takes, right?
That's it.
Or
That's
it takes
it.
as long as it takes.
And I think that's the piece of this is, like, I do believe that deadlines are powerful. I do believe that deadlines make things happen. I do believe that, you know, high school and college and, you know, a work a day week, you know, of 9 to 5 goals and shit like that, that's all valuable. You know, that all matters because it gets shit done, you know, but life has its own way. And I think that the dialogue between those two things is really important. It's also really important in the process that we're in, because we're having a conversation right now that kind of validates finally, you know, the feeling that this is worth it. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just an exercise or some shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like finally, like, listening to you speak, like, you spoke those words.
I was just making shit up, man.
Yeah. Yeah,
No,
that's
but
one.
listen, I
That,
you know,
that's the ironic way to look at
I
it.
really want you
No,
to
that's
know.
the ironic way to look at it. Good on you.
No, I really want you to know that I really appreciate it. And like, you know, I think that you know, for better or worse, I mean, it does require, you know, like what you were saying, like a speculative exercise for me to think that, you know, what I have to say is worthwhile. I
And
mean,
what's great about this is I kind of, you know, I was been searching for what I wanted for my birthday. Like I'm calling people in between 12:30 and 1:30 tomorrow to basically hang out with me, like JMO and Jules and Lisa Mekas and Tom Sepe, and I'd love you to be there. And I think what I recognized is what I from this, what I want is people to ask me questions. Grady will be there at times, you know, and it's just, you know, like it's just I want people to ask me questions because what I recognized in doing this for you is that like and interrupting you when I felt like, you know, okay, that's a great tangent, but let's stay focused on the thing. You know, like my people are here to help guide me to my answers and show me my value. And this process is that. And the stories that we create is to show the value of the things that you have in your heart and in your mind that are sincere, that are authentic, that other people in the story will shame us for, but we will succeed in not being shamed. If in no way these characters succeed, the way that they will succeed is that they will not at the end be shamed for the authentic feelings that they have. They may experience shame in the process. They may have a difficult time with their feelings and what they're going through, but they will not at the end of an episode actually live with that shame. They will have moved through that shame.
okay, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of beauty in terms of like I can't think of any you know any real connections that we have with other races besides Hassan. Like I'm trying to kind of track our history, you know, in the squats and stuff. Like Scab Cadillac and the fact that there was a punk rock band that, you know, had you know,
Yeah, I mean,
blacks and
no, yeah, no, I mean, we didn't. There, I mean, yeah.
it existed around us and we can represent that, you know, like I think
Not that.
Scab
I mean,
Cadillac.
that no, that time there wasn't. There just wasn't. I mean, there, you know, there were people. I mean, like there was Pat. There was Pat at Larnell's house. There was Larnell. There was
Larnell, Doug Bennett.
yeah. So I mean, there was definitely people. They just weren't at the spot.
Right. But I think that it's important. Like, this is one of the things that I think is really cool. So, Liz, we can continue. I just I want to put this in there because when you're looking at the things from C, one of the things that you get in the very first page is always a breakdown of who's in the show. And it ends up being like 150 people. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of people. And even if though it's like far background, every one of those characters count. And that's one of the things that I wanted to stress to you. When we're thinking about this and conceiving of this and telling stories, like you were like, why is Pegolina and fucking Deep Alex important? Because for a moment, they become the focus of the camera. And as soon as they arrive on camera, they become real for the audience. And as real as we can make them is how well they will know where these kids are actually authentically living. And so, like, seeing Scab Cadillac as a multiracial band that's kicking ass on stage together represents something, even though we weren't there working with them and hanging out with them and being their best friends.
You're not gonna get like you're not gonna get uptight about like political correctness, are you?
What do you mean?
Like I'm wondering if this is kind of going in the direction of like political correctness as far as like representation.
No, I'm just saying actually there was representation in our communities. Like, and where I was going was looking for the authentic connections and the authentic bonds between people of really diverse perspectives that our catchment pool of misfits represented. You know, the fact that we were best friends and in a production company with queers, you know, like working and dealing with the AIDS epidemic, losing friends left and right. We weren't in the center of that, but that shit was happening right beside us. You know, I mean, Greg lost a tremendous amount of friends during that time. You know, just because we weren't best friends with the people that died doesn't mean it didn't reach us, didn't mean it's not a part of our story. You know, that's all I'm saying is like we were party to and parallel with utter madness, racial relationships, like, you know, on a level that was like really beautiful, uh, you know, queer suffering, and, you know, like we were right at the edge of all of those things. Were they central to our stories? No, we were having our initiation rites of sexual, sexual identity, you know, in terms of like just conquest and adventure and, you know, weird conundrums of our own minds. But the storylines are adjacent to very valuable stories. And I'm not saying that we need to make them central. I'm just sharing that we should represent them because they were there. That makes sense?
I just don't know where this came from, but yeah, that's fine.
It was looking at the list. Like when I was saying, like, if you, well, it comes out of our conversation yesterday about why are those characters important. And, you know, the second is, you know, when you're making a cast list and you get detailed about who are the people that are in the cast, you know, it becomes the environment that is generated and how important that is to me because of the work that I do. You know, so when I'm looking at how we're writing it, to be able to really share that the environments that we were in were really molding and shaping us. So it's two main reasons. One is because of what we talked about yesterday and a continuing of that conversation. And second, when you look at the breakdown of characters, just to recognize that there's hundreds of characters and they're all valuable to what the central characters are experiencing. You know, and the other piece, you know, is kind of like showing the value is like there's a one, you know, and that the one meaning like for C it was Baba.
You're losing me, man. I would. Can you do a little work around explaining to me a little clearer where you're at and how it relates to what we talked about today?
So what we talked about today was I interviewed you on a lot of different pieces. Um, the protagonist's journey to find a place where they belong, find a place where they can be themselves, no matter where they go, they don't find it. The environment that they're in is super fucking important, is what I'm saying. And the way in which we represent it and how we think about it is super important to me. And I'm just following a through line in terms of the same way that you were for meaning. Like when I was asking you questions, I'm looking for where I put value in the story of what our lives were, which is that we were living in that environment that was incredibly transformative for all these people because they were at the edges and trying to find their place to belong. Where I wanted to go with it, like everything that I was saying was leading somewhere, and where I was trying to lead to was not hard to hold on to because I don't feel like you get where I was going and you didn't let
Just
me go
tell
there.
me, bro. Just
I
tell
don't
me.
remember.
What I'm trying to tell you is you were leading me somewhere and I was lost. I'm just asking you either take me there again or let me know where we're going. I'm not getting it. That's why I'm asking you for, I want to know what you're saying. I'm telling you, I'm not getting why you're saying it. Okay, like
Great.
I'm not knocking you. This is not an attack on you.
No, I get it. I get it. I'm just trying to kind of, in a way, maybe what I'm doing. I want you to recognize. I have to let Peanut in.
So what I'm getting out of this, and what I like is, I feel like kind of what we're getting at is that we're everymen, right? So it's an opportunity to kind of come into contact with different elements that may seem extreme, being able to kind of process that through a kind of a more of an everyman lens, right? So there is this, because I think one of the interesting things about us is our curiosity. Like, we do tend to have an open mind towards learning about things, like new things, and there is something I think very valuable about that. And when I some of the stuff that I hear you talking about makes me think like that's kind of where the value can come from. Like, the value can come from, this wackadoodle thing over here, or this too extreme thing over there, and then being able to kind of process that through this everyman lens that our characters represent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's every man, it's innocence and curiosity, but I think what's important beyond all of that is what you mentioned in your interview, which is we understand everything. We get everything. And we speak about it like, college professors in normal vernacular. Like,
Wait. So, right. So you're saying kind of like we're addressing concepts that are actually kind of high-minded, but it's presented in a more accessible, right? Like, it's kind of accessible. It's not funky language or tribal language, or yeah. Is that kind of what you're saying there?
I guess what I'm saying is that these things come into our world and we have like some kind of adventure with it that's intuitive and action based, and like we're just kind of rolling with it. But when we talk about it, when we have our conversation about it, whether it be 3 lines or 2 pages of dialogue, or a long monologue of one of the characters, that there is a sense of real understanding, like true understanding of the complexities and contradictions of the world that they are in, that they understand racial relationships, that they understand oppression, that they understand the place where they are living.
Well, I mean, yes, and not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, this is a thing, like, being able to process that stuff through that lens of innocence and that lens of curiosity. Not necessarily that they understand it per se. Like I think that that's kind of like a
Well, again, this is
bit.
why like, because to me right now this is about two characters, but it's not. Like, this is what I'm trying to convey, what I was trying to convey. This is not about two characters. This is about the world that these two characters live in and how they process it.
Yeah.
You know, and that while they're processing it, they are actually having true, honest, authentic revelations about the way that the world works, about how it's unjust, about how, you know, and again, it doesn't have to be every time a conversation like the depth of some philosophical shit. You know, in the middle of it, you know, it can be a joke, or one of us can get offended by the other, or, you know what I mean? Like, anything can
Well, I mean,
happen.
one of the things that's interesting about a TV show, and is the pattern of it. You know, like the thing that people can kind of expect when they go to watch that show. The whatever kind of like internal formula of the show is, and one of those things can be potentially that there is that conversation that the two characters have, like maybe at the end of the show, maybe that's how the show gets wrapped up. There's like,
Yeah,
who knows?
we've discussed that. We've discussed that for sure. We've said, you know, again, like in the formula that I sent you in the RBW Bible, that's exactly the structure. You know, it's we're together, we have adventures and conflicts, we come together and we process it until we understand it. You know, it's very much the moral at the end of the fable, you know, and it can be any kind of construct, but that's meaning, like, it doesn't have to end in a good way, it doesn't have to be a perfect digestion, but that there is a kind of format where that occurs. Yeah, and you know, this is I wanted to also read this thing that she wrote because I think it's important.
Who wrote?
Marge Piercy in the So You Want to Write. It's a section called "Loosening the Imagination," and the "What if only, and if this continues" is in it.
Right. I also we're gonna have to wrap up too.
Of course, the line between science fiction and fantasy is blurry. Some novels, such as sword and sorcery tales, are more clearly fantasy, while tales that depend upon changes in technology for their variable are obviously science fiction, but lots of works fall somewhere in between. The borders overlap and labeling doesn't reach us that much. Isaac Asimov, father of science fiction, said that all such works fall into three categories. I've told you them. Speculative, utopian, and dystopian. Many writers are afraid of fantasy. However, it can be liberating to your imagination to move beyond the mundane and realistic. As a child, you probably entertained yourself, consoled yourself with stories in which you had all the powers of a superhero, blah, blah, blah. But just like the idea here is that I don't want us to shy away from elements of this that could be heightened. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that there is, just in our vision of it, because again, we're getting close to trying to pitch this as a formula, you know? And so I just wanted to kind of set that as an incubation, something to think about. I think if you looked back to watch this and listen to yourself, you'll be really proud.
Thanks, bro. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. Yeah, I hope you can get around to definitely check out Lathe of Heaven. I think it's relevant to all the stuff that we're talking about. Actually, I think that the main character and his relationship to the antagonist is feels resonant and significant to a lot of what we're talking about today. Yeah, more so than Midsummer. Like I feel like Midsummer is amazing for the more broader issues, more broader concepts. but and how well that they're handled. But definitely related to like just like that approach, that processing, that way of dealing with the things that come across our plate. Yeah.
The last thing is about questions. I will do my best to listen to Late of Heaven. Tomorrow, 12:30 to 1:30.
I don't know if I'll be able to make it. I have a meeting at 11, but I mean, I can I can probably drive over there.
Or you can just drop in any time on the Zoom link. I'll send you the Zoom link.
Okay, cool, awesome.
But
All
if
right.
you want to come by, I'd actually really love to see you on my birthday. Yeah, that was really good for me to interview you.
Thanks. Yeah, it was interesting.
Watch it. I really want you to watch it. That's my homework for you. If you have any homework for me, let me know.
You know what my homework for you is?
Late of Heaven and Midsummer?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Atlanta and yourself.
No, I've been watching Atlanta, bro. All right, I love you. I'll talk to you later.
Love and peace.